Happy Sabbath and welcome to Vespers. As we get started, just a quick announcement. Tomorrow morning, Berean will be in the FAC instead of the Black Box, and it is going to be starting 15 minutes earlier than normal, so instead of 10:30, it's going to be starting at 10:15 sharp, and Dillis Brooks, the chaplain at Loma Linda, is going to be the special guest for Berean service tomorrow. As most of you are probably already aware, this week has been Missions Week at Walla Walla, and we've been celebrating the different ways that we can serve others with whatever gift that we've been given. And this year, our theme for missions has been whatever gift, based off of 1 Peter 4:10, which says, whatever gift you've been given, use that to serve others as good stewards of God's grace in your life. And so tonight, we're going to be celebrating the fact that no matter whatever gift we have, if it's a skill, an interest, a personality trait, maybe a life experience, maybe you don't even think it is a gift, but whatever you have in your hands, you can use that to serve others. Some returned SMs are going to be sharing their stories and experiences with that, and we're going to be celebrating that tonight. We have here returned SM Miles, who served in Chuk last year, and he's going to be giving our prayer.
All right, let's bow our heads. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for gathering us here this evening to praise you and to learn more about you. And I just pray that you'd have your Holy Spirit in this place, be with each and every person who's speaking and each and every person who's listening. We love you and we trust you. Amen.
Stand with us as we sing.
We live for you.
Please be seated.
Singatambu Vinaka. You guys want to try saying that after me? Singatambu? Nice. Vinaka. That's awesome. You guys have no idea what you just said. Nayadangu Ko Logan Seibold, and I served for 7 months at the Mana SDA primary school in Fiji as a maintenance worker. For me, being a student missionary was at once the most miraculous and unusual, kind of exciting thing that I had ever done. Every day brought new experiences and new ways to look at the world, and at the same time, especially looking back at it now, just another part of my life. There were small problems and big problems, just like here. There were small joys and there were great joys. And just like normal life for each one of us here tonight, there were certainly moments of intense doubt in myself. There were also moments of completely unwarranted confidence. Now I remember one such time in which I had this extreme confidence that I really shouldn't have had, and pride comes before the fall. So I had been in Fiji for about a week, and I lived in quite a primitive house. We had some running water, but it wasn't safe to drink. We had no electricity, no air conditioning, and no Wi-Fi. So it was a very primitive house, but I was feeling really good about myself. You know, I was thinking, nothing can faze me, you know, boy, I'm really tough. I was thinking, I'm on top of the world, nothing can faze me here. That was until that night I was going to the bathroom, and as I rounded the corner, my headlamp shone on several pairs of eyes staring back at me, one of the biggest spiders I had ever seen in my life. Almost as big as my palm, and actually I brought a picture of it tonight to show you. He almost got me, I'll tell you that much. So in my notes, that was spider story in my notes, and then next I have just written rat story. So that's sure to be a doozy. Rat story, it kind of sounds like a bad, low-budget ripoff of Ratatouille. But this rat story does not involve a Fijian rat cooking me delicious French cuisine, unfortunately. So rat story, that one's pretty straightforward. I was in my house, the primitive house, and I heard kind of a ruckus outside, so naturally I went outside to see what all the ruckus was about. And there's some kids outside, they're playing, and they're like throwing a ball at each other, just playing around, except the ball was a dying rat. Yeah, so that kind of freaked me out, not gonna lie. So I'm telling these stories because they happened shortly after I got there to Fiji. You know, at the time I was still fresh when the spider incident and the rat incident occurred. And I can tell you that those were repeating incidents. They occurred pretty often. And I tell them also because they were so unusual, and they were so unlike things that I had experienced before and since here. For example, I don't remember the last time I was walking through campus and saw any one of you throwing a rat at anyone else. For me, one of the big differences about being a student missionary was that every one of these little unusual things that would happen would kind of make me start thinking about how I ended up in that situation. I would wonder about the reason for me being there, and I would wonder why I was there and what had led me there. When people describe why they went out as a student missionary, they often use the word call, as in, I felt called to go to Fiji. And for me, this was always rather confusing because, I'll be honest, I had never had a burning sympathy to help people that are in need. I had never had a small voice in me telling me and guiding me with what to do. I hadn't had a grand revelation, and so I didn't think I fit the description of having a call. So I'd like to propose that tonight. For some people, perhaps a call is a synthesis of many small factors. Perhaps that's for you. Many small factors, as long as they are earnest and honest. And I can name a few that I had in my own experience. I had a desire for time away from school. I think many people can probably relate to that, and for an adventure. I had an interest in experiencing a different culture and lifestyle. I was drawn to the idea of experiencing new things while potentially, hopefully, being a benefit to other people. This one's really important. I had many good people around me encouraging me to serve. And finally, I think I was given a gift from God, just being willing to try. So I'll put it this way, just because of the way I think personally, the way I am, I remember feeling more interested in being a student missionary than I did feel called to be a student missionary. But could it be that God put an interest in my heart, and God put good, encouraging people in my life, and other gifts like a willingness to serve? And the really cool thing about the gift of willingness is that you usually don't have a lot at first. You might only be slightly willing. For me, when I went, I only had enough to get me going and to get me there. But willingness is something that when you exercise it, it grows and develops in meaningful ways. Tonight you'll hear several other student missionaries share their stories about their various experiences, about the gifts that they went out with and the new ones that they developed in their time there. Each one supported by good people, each one pursuing an interest and having a willingness, and each in our own way called to serve.
And I served on the beautiful island of Mazur in the Marshall Islands. I was a sixth grade teacher, and before I left, I felt that I was so underqualified and not ready to take this leap of faith. That idea stayed with me even in the third week of being in Mazur. I remember sitting in the pews before Vespers, and I prayed to God, and I asked God, please use me in ways I never imagined to be used. As I finished up my prayer, people began to walk in to the church, and the local kids began to sit next to me, and my vice principal came and sat next to me. And with a big smile on his face, and I did some studying, and I hypothesized that that smile meant I have to do something for him. And I was right, I did. He asked me, are you ready? Confused, I was like, ready for what? You ready to preach tonight? And if you knew me before Mazur, you knew that standing in public and preaching and all that, that's not my thing. And it's crazy because I literally just prayed about this. So I said, you know what? Yes, I'll do it. And as soon as I said I'll do it, my heart began to race, my palms began to sweat, and I look up at God and it's like, God, really, right now? You had to answer my prayer this quick? You couldn't have waited 1 month, maybe even like a couple weeks, like now? I was like, okay, well, whatever. Luckily, he made me get through my little sermon. I was shaking all the time, but I made it. And little did I know that that moment would be a turning point in my life. Not a week went by when I got a knock at my door. And to my surprise, I opened the door and I see Gina and Gideon with, guess what, a big smile on their face. And they tell me, you're going to be our new youth leader. Great. I was not expecting it, but I knew the smile, had a price to it. So as my year began, school started coming and basketball season started to show up. And no one wanted to be the head coach, so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I know nothing about basketball, so that was a learning progress. And I got to formed these relationships with my boys. And, you know, I told them my stories of like me in high school and like my addictions to certain things. And, you know, we grew closer and closer together, and I was able to minister to them. I was able to, you know, guide them in their own walks with their addiction. Those who have served in the islands know that betel nut is a huge thing on the islands. And they would walk up after practice or after school and be like, "Coach, like, I heard your story about your addiction. Like, we want to stop," you know? And we just grew closer and closer together, and luckily a lot of them did stop. As the year progressed, those relationships grew stronger, and we decided to throw a tournament, a whole island tournament with public schools there and SDA and Catholic schools. And if you would have asked me, I would have done something like that before my mission year, I would have just laughed in your face, because that's a monumental task. People know that Islanders are kind of hard to like plan stuff and be on time, but you know, we did it thanks to God. And as my time in Madrigal started to wrap up, I sat down in my favorite spot, which is in front of the ocean on these stones, and I was looking out and I was reflecting on my year. Since the moment I was sitting in the pews praying to God to use me, to the moment of, you know, after the basketball tournament and all this stuff I did. And I noticed a big change. I used to think I was this dude from Walla Walla University that had no talents, had no gifts, and I became this leader, this mentor, this person that inspired my students to go out and achieve bigger goals in life. And I know sometimes we may feel like we don't have gifts, and that's okay. The cool thing about it is that God provides us with whatever gift so that we can go out and make a difference in people's lives.
I invite you to stand as we sing again. You're an altar of broken souls, but you delight in the offering. You have the heavens to call your home, but you abide in the song we sing. 10,000 angels surround your throne to bring you praise that will never cease. But hallelujah from here below is still your favorite melody.
my name is Eileen Castillo, and I was nurse in the country of Peru. And at the time, when I was looking into the call and I saw the title of a nurse, it made me really skeptical and nervous. I was just finishing off my freshman year and trying to survive A&P. But I felt God was calling me to follow this call. And so I decided to trust in Him and take a leap of faith. So arrived in Peru with very little skills, but God definitely helped me. First, our coordinator down there was a nurse himself. And with the help of the local doctor who volunteered with us, they both taught me everything that I needed to learn. They taught me how to take vitals, how to give shots, and even how to put in IVs. I was able to also see the entire process of our patients by sitting with the doctor during consultations, listening to the patients, their symptoms, to their diagnosis, and even to their treatment. We had a small pharmacy where we gave them the medication. So it was a great blessing to see the entire process. And at the end, when the patients were done and we would hand them their little bag of pills, they would always say, "Muchas gracias, doctora." And even though they were saying, "Thank you, doctor," and they didn't know any better, they didn't know that we weren't doctors, but they were just so grateful. And it was such a blessing to see how we were able to help. A lot of these communities were poor, small communities that didn't have access to health care. So to be able to serve them and help them was such a blessing. There's other scenarios where one time I was able to be part of an ultrasound, and to see the smile on the mom's face when she heard her baby's heartbeat for the first time was just incredible. In another situation, a little boy came into the clinic with half of his thumb hanging off, and it was actually quite incredible. The little boy didn't cry, didn't scream. He was just as fascinated as we were on how we were stitching up his thumb, and he had a smile the entire time. And it was just incredible to be able to help these people in these certain situations. And even closing near my end of my year, I had the opportunity with a group of missionaries that came to help us for a week, and they entitled me with the job of teaching them. So it was my turn to teach them how to take vitals and how to give shots. And it was a great opportunity to see just how far God had led me from where I started learning and not knowing anything to this, that moment being able to help others learn how to serve Him as well. So even though I was not qualified, God helped me be able to develop the skills and learn to be able to serve Him. One of those great mission statements that we had down there that we like to say was, "His heart, our hands." And that's something I was able to see. It was His love and it was His work, but it was my hands. God was able to use my hands to serve Him. And so if God is calling you today, know that He will help you develop those gifts to serve Him.
Savada Lokondwa. My name is Emily, and last year I went as a student missionary to a country in Eastern Africa by the name of Zambia. And while I was there, I worked in a hospital as a medical assistant. Before I left, I was very excited, and I was very hopeful, and I knew that God was going to use me in the ways that He needed me to be used. But I knew that I was unqualified for the position. I had little to no medical experience. I had only spent a couple hours studying for classes and a couple hours shadowing in a hospital, which is pretty much nothing. The job title when I was there meant something different every single day. It was kind of a vague job title, and I jumped into this knowing that I was going to develop something out of this new call, out of this new position, and it ended up being very good. I was able to avoid repetition in what I did. However, the fact that it was a vague call meant that sometimes there was a little room for me improvising and being creative in finding ways that I could help people in the hospital and in the community. I only spent about 3 to 5 days a week in the hospital, which meant that sometimes I ended up feeling a little bit more of like a burden on the community and the hospital than a help. And that was really hard for me. So rainy season in Zambia is a wonderful shift because you go from several months of 100-degree or more weather to 70-degree weather and pouring all the time, which is pretty nice because I'm from the Northwest. But during this time, Zambians don't really go out and they don't really spend a lot of time outside. They don't really like the rain. So the hospital was very quiet, and there wasn't a lot for me and my SM friend Claudia to do, or the doctors. And so I remember one of the very first days of rainy season, Claudia and I went to the hospital, and we couldn't find anything to do. We wandered the different wards, we went to female, we went to lab, we went to surgery, and there was nothing for us to do. But we eventually made our way to the pediatric ward, where we found a doctor who was doing rounds. And we're like, well, okay, we'll just follow the doctor and find something to do. So we followed the doctor, we helped a little bit here and there, usually cleaning up things. But it wasn't until Claudia saw this other room that had a couple boys and girls. So we went over and we started chatting as much as we could with the language barrier. And there was 2 little boys in this room and 1 little girl. The 2 little boys had both broken their arms trying to climb up a mango tree to get mangoes, and the little girl had a pretty severe illness. And so the interesting thing was that somebody had come through that day earlier and brought balloons for them. So Claudia grabbed a balloon, and we started playing with the little kids with the balloon. I thought this would be like, a 5-minute little activity, but we ended up playing with balloons for 3 hours. I don't know if you've ever played with balloons for 3 hours, but there's not a lot more than just passing it back and forth. So near the end of my shift and Claudia's shift, we were like, well, okay, at least we played with some kids today. And so we were about to head home for the day when one of the nursing students from the hospital stopped us, and she was like, hey, and this is a nursing student who speaks both English and Nyanja, which is the local language, and she said, I just wanted to tell you that the mothers were so thankful that you came and you spent time with our children. That means the world that you would be a friend for them. And that's in that moment I realized that sometimes it's as simple as being a friend. And sometimes that's all you have, and that's okay. Now that I'm home, I'm still very excited. And I'm still very hopeful for my future and my careers and all the things that I'm going to do. But I'm still very, very unqualified, both in school and everything that I do. I'm unqualified to speak right now. But here I am. And there's one thing that I learned during my SM year is that God does not call the qualified, but he goes ahead and he just qualifies those who are called. And that's really important. He calls us to use whatever gift we've been given or gifts that we already have, something as simple as being a friend. He calls us to use those gifts to go serve others.
You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. what a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus.
Happy Sabbath. My name is Natalia Perry, and I served as a youth pastor in Lodi, California. To be completely honest, I have a really hard time talking about my SM experience. As you've seen, everyone else who shared tonight went out of the country to serve. But if you didn't catch my location, I went to Lodi, California. Driving there takes about 9 hours and 52 minutes from my house in Salem. And I didn't step into a different culture. I mean, California is definitely different than the Pacific Northwest, which I realized when I showed up wearing my sockos, which is chacos with socks, for those of you who don't live in the Pacific Northwest. And so I also didn't understand what all the hype was about In-N-Out. And really, I still don't understand that hype. It's not that good. And maybe it's just because I'm a vegetarian, but just wasn't that great. So other than that, the culture was pretty familiar. I was in the same time zone as my family and friends, in a culture I understood doing a job very similar to what I'd like to do after I graduate. My missionary year was very different than the experiences that other people had, yet I've also come to realize that on a deeper level, it was actually pretty similar. Up until I decided to go out as an SM, people told me I was an introvert, which honestly may have been the case, I don't really know. So when I accepted the call to go to California, where I would be the only student missionary in a community where everyone my age was away at college, I didn't really think it would be a big deal. Introverts are supposed to draw their energy from being alone, right? And it's not like I was alone all the time. I lived with my aunt and uncle, which I loved, and I spent all the time I could at Lodi Academy, which was the academy connected to the church I was at. I even joined a gym so I could be around people, and that was a good time. Yet I often found myself alone, a lot more than I'd ever experienced before. And sure, I struggled with other things while I was away, but nothing so constant and so draining as this feeling of being alone. I know that during my year, I was able to serve despite my loneliness. I was able to connect with students who I'm still friends with today. And as the year came to a close, I saw a lot of growth in both myself and in the students. And so I knew, as the year was ending, I couldn't just come back to campus as if nothing had happened. And I knew two things. First, I needed to be connected to a community. And second, I needed to serve in a meaningful way. This path was not an easy one. So while we were out, the SM office sent us an email about job opportunities on the student missions team. And I knew some people on the team, and I truly believe that student missions is a fantastic ministry. So I thought that God was calling me to serve on this team. So I sent in an application, and the missions chaplain emailed me back and was like, I don't think the missions team is the right fit for you. And I was like, all right. So at that point, I stopped reading the email, and I was a little depressed. I was like, cool. And I just felt like it would be impossible to get connected on a campus as big as Walla Walla. But later that day, I went back to my email and reread the email, and I realized that the chaplain was actually trying to do me a favor. He felt like my passions and gifts would align better with campus ministries. And he said that he'd already sent my name to the chaplain and recommended that I get involved with the campus ministries team. So those applications opened up a few weeks later, and I applied, I went through the interview process, and I was eventually asked to be dorm chaplain. So it was my perfect job. My The whole goal was to connect with people, which was amazing after coming out of this year of loneliness. And so I came back to campus early for RA retreat and for campus ministries retreat, and it was so exciting just to be around people, to get plugged in, and just experience this deep sense of community that I've been craving all year long. And while I really enjoyed the work that I did throughout the year, I realized that many people here in Walla Walla experience the same type of loneliness that I experienced during my SM year. In the spring, I was at Taqueria with a friend, and we were just talking about ministry opportunities for the next year. And for a long time, we discussed this issue of loneliness on our campus. And that's when I realized that we need consistent community in our lives. People we can really do life with, people with whom we can talk about topics that weigh heavily on us, people who want to encourage us in our schoolwork, our daily lives, and especially in our walk with God. I'd been a part of a small group on campus before I left, and then I joined it again when I came back. And it was a place where I felt at home. I felt like I belonged. And so that was an experience that I wanted to share with the rest of campus. So I sat down with our chaplain, Albert, and pitched my idea. Granted, it was more of a rambling of dreams than a professional business pitch, but he chose to believe in me and gave me the opportunity to work with small groups here on campus. This has been the biggest blessing for me. It's given me the opportunity to work with people who are excited about getting connected and who love getting other people connected. Going back to my experience as an SM and transitioning back here to life in Walla Walla, I felt like I hadn't served in the same way that other missionaries had served. I didn't have a crazy story of finding a spider the size of my palm in the bathroom, and I hadn't worked in some rural hospital in Africa. Yet I do believe my SM year was valuable both to me and to the community I served. If you'd asked me right after I came back what gifts God had blessed me with during my SM year, I might have said something like patience, understanding, leadership, and all of these are true. But 3 years out from my experience, I think the biggest gift God gave me was the gift of loneliness. It was through my loneliness that I realized just how much connections matter. And that's something that's driven my service ever since. 1 Peter 4:10 says, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. We have all been blessed with these natural gifts and abilities. God calls each and every one of us to use our gifts to serve others. Maybe your gift falls in line with one of the speakers who shared tonight. Maybe you're good at fixing things, or you're a gifted artist. You may be bilingual, you may love to heal, coach, or maybe it's something else. Whatever it is, your gift is valuable because it's a gift that God has given to you. The question is, how are you going to use your gift? Student missions is a fantastic way to use your gift, but there are many other ways as well. This week, we've emphasized many different service opportunities. We've talked about summer camps and As We Global Service, CHE projects, missions. The opportunities are endless. So how can you use your gift right now, maybe even this week, to serve others? Just like how service doesn't start with a mission year, it doesn't end with a mission year either. Choosing to go out and serve can be an incredible growth experience, and it's just the beginning. Choosing a life of service is what each of us is called to do. What service looks like for you is likely different than what it looks like for me, but the call is still the same. How are you going to serve?
You have been given a gift. a gift that is more than words can describe. You've been blessed with this life, with breath in your lungs and light in your soul. You can be a catalyst, a spark that can change the world. But unfortunately, this world isn't fair. Everywhere we turn, we are met with destruction and despair. Can anything I do actually make a dent? What is God doing? This couldn't possibly be his intent. But he made you, didn't he? You have been blessed with life and gifts that God himself has placed inside you. It's up to you to use them. Whatever gift you've been given, whatever skills you've learned, whatever passion you have, use them. Use them to serve. Use them to teach. Use them to coach. Use them to build. Use them to sing. Use them to heal. Use them to lead. Use them to love. Use them because you have been blessed so that you may bless others.
Stand with us as we sing our last song.
There's no darkness in your eyes. There's no question in your mind. Almighty God of mercy. There's no hiding from your face. There's no striving in your grace, God of mercy. God Almighty, let there be light. Open the eyes of the blind. Purify our hearts in your fire. Breathe in us, we pray. Jesus, have your way. There's no borders in your love, no division in your heart, God of heaven, God of freedom. There's no taking back the cross, no regretting what it cost, God of freedom, God of heaven, let there be light. Open our eyes of the blind. Purify
Dear God, wow. I still can't believe the journey that you took me on years ago. I still can't believe how it ended, how it's going on today. And it was incredible. And I know that you have a journey in mind for everyone here. And I know that you have the gifts and the talents and the skills lined up for us. And you've had them lined up for quite a while now. Thank you for that. So please be with these people and where they're going next for you. Amen. Go ahead and be seated. Just a couple closing announcements for Sabbath. You know, tomorrow is Black History Celebration Sabbath, and as Pedrito would say, it's going to be a party for Jesus. It's going to be a good time, so come back here for second serve, and a part of this is a choir that you can join tonight. If you feel the Spirit move you, if you love to sing, head down to the choir room right after church, right after Vespers, so in just a few minutes here. And also, if you feel maybe the call to go and serve as a missionary, or if you're curious what on earth that's all about, or you just want to pick up a pamphlet, there's some booths out in the lobby that you'll see. And lastly, I want you to think back real quick to when you got a call from a friend you hadn't seen in years, or just a text. It feels good. It feels really, really good, actually. It makes your day. It changes it no matter what's happening. So, if you go over to the end of the lobby by the women's bathroom, there is a table with a box, and next to the box is a bunch of papers, and next to those papers are a bunch of notes. And you can take those and you can write a note to a friend that's abroad that hasn't heard from you in a long time. Believe me, they miss you. They miss this campus, and they don't hear from us very often. No matter how many packages we send, and they receive, there's nothing that connects them quite like your note. Happy Sabbath.